All right, we left off yesterday with lead acid batteries talking about the hydrometer readings. And we talked about these were the state of charge, which is to say that you can take a hydrometer and stick it in the cells and take a reading and determine the state of charge of the lead acid battery based on the hydrometer, because we know that a properly charged battery will be more acidic, and a discharged battery, the electrolyte will be more waterish. So low goes down to 1.2. So it'll still be a little stingy on the taste buds. All right, readings must be temperature corrected for the temp of the electrolyte. That is not the ambient temperature. So it's got to be the temperature of the electrolyte, not the ambient. All right. So this is where it can get a little bit off the rails because there are different data sources. So AC 4313, 1 Bravo, shows no correction. At 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So, but your textbook says states 70 to 90 degrees. No correction necessary. Yes.
At that point, wouldn't you go off of the battery manual?
Well, that's the rule that you always go by, right? So is the textbook appropriate data?
No.
Never. Is AC 4313 acceptable data?
Yes.
That's the title. Only when
It's not specified.
not specified in the battery or the actual manual. So, but since the FAA questions will be based not upon the manual but upon what's written in their textbooks, there you go. So anyway, but here's the correction temperature chart. So let's think this one through. So hydrometer tests, so if we had 1.240, but it was we measured the electrolyte at 110 degrees. What would we do with that? Add 12. So that'd be 13.240. You gotta, yeah, it's really charged. All right, so we had 12 points. 12 points is 0.012. 0.012. It does say points. So we talk about points. Let's say 12 points should be 0.12, but whatever. It's 0.012, so 1.252. So what can we take away from that? When it is hot, the hydrometer will read. Hydrometer will read low or high? Low. Let me think. How could we think about that? Remember that. So when it's hot, it's going to read low. So it's going to sink. Yeah? Yeah, specific gravity go closer to water, so the hydrometer would sink. So when it's hot, thank you. Single clap from the audience.
Didn't we kind of talk about something like this when we were doing engines and we were on the block about oil and we were talking about consumption and stuff, and when the engine's warm, like it's the viscosity, specific gravity was a part of that conversation.
Was it? Yeah, well,
Similar
I don't know if specific gravity was. Maybe it was. But I was trying to think of a way to, kind of keep this in your mind so it makes sense. So when it's hot, it's going to read low. So it's more, not as thick. You want to go oilish. This doesn't really work. Not as thick, so the hydrometer would kind of fall down a little bit, read low. If it's cold, it's going to be more viscous. Like oil would be chunks of ice in there, so the hydrometer would read higher. I don't know if that works for you.
Couldn't it be just like pressure? Because like air pressure, when it's warm it expands, and when it's cold it's condensed.
Okay, so expansion now. Would that work? So when it's hot, it expands.
It's the volume.
It's density.
Air density, yes.
Density would work. Density goes lower. I like that one. Convert it to air, like a pilot would. Hot air is less dense, and less dense things are going to sink. Yeah.
I think I missed something earlier. So is the is higher than one more?
Acidic. So acidic would be, one would be more water.
So it's measuring the acidity of it, not necessarily the density of the liquid.
It is the density.
It's literally the density based upon the acidic.
Here's what I'm asking: is higher more dense or less dense than water?
More dense. Think about it this way. So, fresh water, salt water, right? Well, we can think about, what the Dead Sea and stuff like that. Everybody goes there. Do you sink or do you float in that stuff? You float right on the top, right? Because it's so salty. And so if you put a hydrometer in that, this thing's just going to barely go in there, and it's going to say it's way salty. It's going to be really high because it floats in there, so it goes really high. So salt is really high, so you're going to get the higher specific gravity. You go to fresh water, it's going to sink down the fresh water because it's not as dense. So same thing with, now we're talking about the sulfuric acid equated to salt, makes the water more dense, so it was going to rise up more.
Right.
So, and I was just trying to come up with a way to go, well, which way does it go when it's hot or cold? So the hotter the electrolyte is, we could think, well, like air, it would expand. This isn't true. It expands, I guess it would be a little bit, and is less dense. Therefore, you're going to get a lower reading. So you have to add something to it to make it correct. That worked for me. Worked for you guys? All right.
Boiled potatoes, they say.
Boil potatoes? Watch pot never boil. Okay. I don't know where that came from, but
I'll eat it.
what if we had the same reading? 1.27, I don't know. I got something different. I wrote my notes. What if we had 1.275, 1.275, and it was 60 degrees out? Okay, so 60 degrees is -8. So, but it's minus 0.008. I don't like that they did points like that.
Yeah.
It makes it kind of difficult. Well, 1 point equals 1%. That's what that means. And so 1 equals 100. So 1 equals 100. So it's 3 decimal places. That's why. Okay, so what do I come up with here? 1.267. We're going the other way now. So because it's colder, we had 1.275. And is that good or bad on its own?
That's good.
It's good because, right, it's about 1.3 to 1.275 is good. We're like, woohoo, fully charged. But then we do the correction. We come up with 1.267. Now what do we have? Medium charge. You see how if we take in consideration the temperature, that's the way it's going to work. So when we take electrolyte readings, we take the little turkey baster thing, we stick it in the cell, we squeeze it, you pull it up in there, and we're going to take a reading. Some of them have a little arm that moves back and forth. Some of them have an actual hydrometer that has to float. So you actually have to have those are the worst because you have to have a water level in there that allows it to float. You can't suck it all the way up in there. The one that I brought in has little discs that will float to the top. I like that the best because you can fill it all the way up, and it doesn't break as easy. And so you take a reading on it, you write down your reading, you put the electrolyte back in the same cell. Don't mix up the electrolytes with cells. And we come up, we take electrolyte reading, and it says 1.1. So is that good or bad? Bad. So we're going to add electrolyte, right?
No.
No, why not?
Just gonna charge it.
You're going to charge it. Yeah. So when you first get the battery, and it comes with a bottle of electrolyte, you just squirt it in there. It's done. It's the right stuff. And so it shouldn't really change into something else, although you do tend to add water often, but I've never had to add electrolyte. I think the book does talk about correcting it. So I suppose if you charged it and you were still low, you can read the manual on the battery, and if they allow you to mix it up, put some electrolyte in, then go ahead. All right, let me see what we got. Return electrolyte. To the same cell. Don't mix it up. Check all cells. Not just one. You're supposed to take a reading across them. Make sure that they're all somewhat the same. A difference of 0.050 between cells. Indicates battery near end of life. All right, let's talk about power ratings. A lead acid battery, the voltage per cell, so voltage is how much? 2.1 volts per cell. How much is the voltage for a NiCad battery? Just invert them. You guys in lab keep telling me that battery is too, it's not. Okay, so capacity. Well, as we know, capacity is rated in amp hours. So, try to condense some of this. Capacity rated in amp hours. That's how many amps you're going to get per hour. So it is amps times hours equals amp hours. I don't want to confuse this too much. The actual rating of an aircraft battery is not done on a 1 amp hour rating. So in other words, if you had a 25 amp hour battery, they don't actually discharge it for 1 hour and go, well, we got 20 amps out of 1 hour to the 20 amp hour battery. They actually do it over 5 hours and see what they got over a 5 hour period and then rate it at that. Why they picked 5, I don't know. But we don't then say it's a 5 amp hour rated battery. They see how it did over 5 hours, just like you guys are doing with your NiCad over 4 hours, so to speak. So you have a 24 amp hour battery, and you discharge it over 6 at 4 hours, and then you go, it's 24 amp hours, right? They do the same thing with these lead acid, but they do it over 5 hours. So if you had 5 amps for 5 hours, then they'd say, it's get our calculator if you need to, because it's 5 amps times 5 hours is, carry the 1, is 25 amp hours. So it's 25 amp hours. So then you would say, so I get how many amps out of it in 1 hour? 25. But you don't really. It's going to be different. So just know that. It's based on the 5 hour. So I hope that didn't confuse you. based on a 5-hour discharge. And if you do have a 5-hour discharge or longer, I suggest you see a doctor. All right. Common ratings. Common ratings they're around 25 to 30 amp hours. Which is kind of funny because like my battery, I think it's the part number on it is 25, I think. Can't remember. And it leads you to kind of believe it's 25 amp hour, but it's really not. Okay. And then when we talk about this capacity, we talk about C rates. So let me see. C rates. I'm really getting off my notes here. C rates. Now, for those of you that have completed the NiCad project, they write it as 1C1 alpha, right? Yep. Yeah. Which, that's a lot in there. But a lot of ones in there. Sometimes you just see it as 1C. I've seen it as C1. It's the C1 rate. So you just kind of have to pay attention to what is it they want. So a C1 or 1C rate, I'm fine. You can call it which way you want. So if we had a 30 amp hour battery, what is the 1C1A rate? That is, how much does it put out in 1 hour? So that would be 30 amp hours. But what if it's a 1C battery? Then what? Well, 30 amp hours. What if I said a C1 rate? Well, 30 amp hours. All right. But 0.5C? So that would be 15 amps. Well, that's times what we can do this. Times 1 hour. Times 1 hour. It's 30 amp hours, or 30 amps times 1 hour. 1 hour. So 30 amps. We'll do that. 30 times 1 hour. They're talking 30 times 1 hour. 0.5C would be
15 amp hours.
well, not 15 amp because it's a 30 amp hour battery, so it's 15 amps times 2 hours, right? 0.1C. Okay, so we're talking about 30 amp hour battery, so it's how many? 3 amps times 10 hours. All right, so you're just going to look for that right there. So this becomes kind of a thing, and what I'm trying to get you to do in lab is, if I said, well, create a discharge or recharge plan for a battery, and so you go into the manual and it says, it gives you these options. Well, we don't care if you do this, this, or this. All right, as somebody who has to think about what you're going to do with these batteries. So in other words, you guys discharge all the batteries, right? And then we need more batteries, so I have to charge them, or Kelly's got to charge them. I don't mind if you do it. So we got to charge them. So I think, all right, so we take all the batteries and I put all the cells now in series, okay? Because I'm thinking of amps, and amps and series are all the same, yeah? Okay, good. You're with me. So I have to charge it. So I go over to the charger. And as I've talked about, the charger, on the charging side of it, I have two choices, CP or CI. And that stands for? Okay. Or constant current. So if I take the machine and I put it on constant potential, like I finished checking my battery, and so I wanted to, it passed, and so now I'm going to charge it, and I go to my lead acid gill flooded battery manual, and what does it say is the preferred method of charging? Constant potential. So lead acid batteries like constant potential. That's good news, because what is it going to get in the aircraft? Constant potential. The alternator is set at a certain voltage, and it puts out the certain voltage. That is called constant potential. And this is going to get the amps it's going to get. If it's dead, it's going to pull all the amps it wants. If it's when it starts charging up, it'll just kind of charging resistance goes up. It says, I'm kind of full. I don't need any more. All right, and so I'm going to do the constant potential. But if the manual said charge it at and we'll go back to 30 amp hour battery, charge it at a 0.1 C rate. Well, when I go up to the machine, where do I see the point C1? It's not written anywhere on there. So if you say that you're going to charge at a point, I don't know what that is, right? Or the book says it. I have to think about it. Well, a 0.1 C. Well, of course, that doesn't work because that would actually be a constant current. So that was the best example. But if I was doing constant current, then I would actually have to convert that. So when you say and you're talking to somebody, the manual might say charge it at a 1 C rate, a half C. You have to convert that into whatever battery you're working with. And you follow what I'm saying? And actually say, the right thing would be is I'm going to charge the battery at a 1 C rate, parentheses, 45 amps, for a period of, right? That would be the way to do it. So, okay, so back to this. We have the C rates, which work for all the batteries. See if you guys can help me out on this one. Batteries are all, not aircraft batteries. I've never seen this on an aircraft battery. But I do see, on car batteries, CCA. What is that? Cold cranking amps. Cold cranking amps. Let me see. Do I have the definition of cold cranking amps? The amount of current available for 1 minute when cold. So cranking amps, that is current available for 1 minute. It's a lot. What do I have here? 60 seconds. Oh, it's 0 degrees. 1 minute at 0 degrees. I think Fahrenheit. Freezing. So, unfortunately, there's only about 3 or 4 of us in this room who remember all of this. And that was, during the football games, we had the Sears Die Hard battery commercial. And they always had it's dark, it's cold, and a snowbank. And all you saw was the dark and the cold and the snowbank. One of these cars has a Sears Die Hard battery. And then you'd see 4 headlights. 2 of them would kind of flicker, come on. The other one just flicker and go dead. That one's got the Sears Die Hard. So it had cold cranking amps. So it worked even in the cold. Yeah.
So 0 Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius?
What's 0 freezing? Probably Celsius. Sorry. Did I write that? 1 minute cold. No, I actually wrote Fahrenheit. In case you live up in North Dakota. It does get cold up there. All right. But this is really more of a car thing. I've never seen that on an aircraft. On our little tiny batteries, those things are so powerful. That some of you've had. There's another thing on there that I'd never seen before, but I can't remember. Anybody know what that is? It's an automotive thing. I don't remember what it is. It's pulse amps or something. Some pulse amps. It's another way of saying kind of the same thing. Okay. On aircraft battery, back to aircraft batteries, and I've lost my. So keep in mind that the discharge is not linear. By that, I mean, I pulled up an example of a Gill G242 24-volt battery. Let's see if we can figure it out. Oh, the C1 rate. That doesn't sound right. Whatever. This is what I got. The 1 hour, so that'd be C1 is 10 amps. That's not very much. The 30-minute should be 20, but it's not at 17 amps. And the 60-second, you would think it'd be 60 amps, right? So 60 seconds. So 1 minute. 1 minute would be, how many amps would that be? Be a lot. 60. So 1 hour times 60. So it's 150. So it's just not very linear. There's no point in that really, but other than this is kind of like the cold cranking amps down here. Cold cranking amps is that. All right, let's see. Temperature. I think we covered this. Temperature decreases battery performance. Cold inhibits the chemical reaction. And we talked about I did write this before. Why do we charge batteries up? Keep them charged in the winter? So they don't freeze. All right. So higher specific gravity has higher freezing point. So I think you guys are okay if I don't write little 12. Wow. So 1.300 freezes. Freezes at negative 95 degrees F. And 1.10 freezes at plus 19 F. If we add water to a battery, we don't take hydrometer readings right away, correct? Also, if you were servicing a battery in the cold and you add a little bit of water, you want to make sure that you charge it up afterwards so you get the mixture, get it all mixed up. Otherwise, you're going to have ice on top, which is not good. All right. And just hit a few more highlights here. I think we've covered this. Charging. It's all lead acid. Let's see. They have two methods. They are. What are my two methods of charging? There you go. It's always going to be the same answers. Constant current, constant potential. We'll do constant current first. Constant current. So that is voltage will current remains constant. And voltage varies. Varies to voltage varies to keep the current the same. So my lead acid battery, after it failed the first test, the manual says now recharge it at constant current between 0.5 amp to 5 amps.
What did you do yours at?
5 amp. Well, the first day I did it like at 2.5, and then next day I came in and did it for 5 amps. So I did 5 amps for I think 4 hours. So if I just 20, and then I had 3 from the other day. So topped it off. So I will put it on constant current, set the dial for 5 amps, and you watch the voltage fluctuate. So as the battery's dead, the voltage will be low because it takes not a lot of voltage to put the 10 amps in. As the battery starts filling up, its charging resistance goes up. It's like your belly, I ate a lot, man. It's kind of full, you're kind of. So it's starting to get full, big old tummy there. And so it starts pushing back on it, but the machine's like, I got to give you 5 amps. So I'm just going to put more pressure at it. So you just start watching the voltage go up, 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 up. But what does the amps do? It stays the same. All right, so constant current, let me see. Yeah, use caution with this method because it doesn't regulate well. And constant current, we should put here. Not preferred. Not preferred. Only time I've seen this as the preferred method is after it's failed its initial capacity test, then they want you to do it this way. So use caution with that. You can use a charger to charge multiple batteries instead of just charging one at a time. And you could, I'm just gonna say that. You can use constant current, but if they're all the same voltage, you can use constant potential too. But I was gonna say, if they're of different voltages, just don't do that. That's just a really bad idea. Yeah.
On the constant current definition, it's current remains constant and voltage
Varies.
Varies.
I know, I kind of
I was
screwed
like,
up my
surges?
spelling. VARIES.
You're good.
All right, and then we have, no, that's not preferred, that shouldn't be 2. That's just a point. That's a point. Now we'll have 2. Constant potential. Which is voltage remains the same. While current varies. So this one, you select proper voltage and let it go. So my battery, I selected 14.2 volts. And when the battery's dead, my amps are going to be high. So while it's dead, amps high. It could be really high. It could go 20, 30 amps. But you can just watch it fall because it doesn't stay that very, very long. And then when it's charged, the amps are low. So it'll just keep going down, down, down. Pretty soon you come over and you look at your amps, you're like, 1 or 2 amps, and it's done. This is the preferred method. For lead acid. And it's a good thing because this is how the battery is charged on the aircraft. This is how battery is charged in the aircraft. So it's happy, it likes it. Sometimes you get a battery that won't take a charge. And you put it on a charger. You can really see this on the charger, the gray one that we're using right now. And you'll take a battery, so we'll say it's 12 volts, we'll set it to 14 volts, and you know it's dead. And it won't do anything. You won't start an airplane, barely run the lights, and you put it on 14 volts, and you look at it, and it's like 0.1 amp, 0.2 amps. That's it. And you're like, oh, I know it's, that is really low, even for a fully charged battery. And what do you think's going on with that? Man, just like that. What's wrong with it? Plates are blocked with sulfate. That's exactly what happened to all the batteries that I pulled out of storage that we weren't allowed to use before, and I pulled them out, so we're going to start using them. And I took it out, they'll all put on a charger, 14 volts, nothing. I mean, like 0.1 amp. So I switched it over to constant current, and I was like, well, I'm going to put 2 amps into it. So I cranked the dial on there till I get 2 amps over here. I look over here, what do I got? Like 40 volts. I mean, it is just trying so hard. And I did that for hours. And then go to do a discharge, instantly dead. It just wouldn't do anything. So.
Did you try dropping it?
What?
Did you try dropping it?
I didn't. Didn't think about that. Should have. Dropped it right into the garbage. We can put that a battery that will not take a charge is or has, I This has lead sulfate. Sometimes you can save them, and not to an airworthy fashion. That's what I would say about that. So I had probably 8 of those batteries. I was able to sort of save 2. I had a note at one point, and I'd read somewhere that, well, I'll just put it here. Never rapid charge. VRLAs. Why not? What's VRLA?
Sealed batteries.
Valve regulated lead acid sealed batteries. Never rapid charge them. Why not? What's that?
They boil.
Huh?
They boil.
Well, all batteries are going to boil. They're going to bulge. How come they're going to bulge? They're not vented. But if you push enough pressure in it, it'll vent at. Yeah, but then you can start losing material out of it, and then you can't put it back in. So you better be really careful. And plus, if it doesn't vent fast enough, you're going to crack it. So I have read some places where it said only use approved VRLA chargers. Well, I've had Concord batteries, and they didn't say anything about that. You just have to be careful with you doing it, and the aircraft is not going to care. It's just going to do its things. Let's see. We already talked about personal protection equipment, safety glasses. Negative is last on, first off. Don't charge. Don't charge in the aircraft. What do I mean by that?
Don't hook it up inside of an aircraft.
Don't hook up a big charger. Every shop, it's just like us. You look out there, we've got automotive chargers. People just wheel them over there, put the automotive charger on. It's really not recommended because they're not really for aircraft batteries. They're going to charge a little bit more, and then you're going to get hydrogen in the aircraft, and that's just bad. Now, I do have a little trickle charger that when I'm working on the airplane, and I haven't flown it in a while, I just drag it out and I'll put it on there inside the airplane. There's not a problem. I don't have any notes on this, but one of the really big things in aviation is the battery. Is it battery minder or battery tender? Tender. And they're about, I looked at it, about $150 or so, something like that. And I have a lot of customers who I've seen have them. And it's a kit that you can buy. They're for aircraft. And it attaches to the airplane, and you can actually get it where you can have an external receptacle. And it's a whole computer-controlled charging system for aircraft because people don't fly their aircraft on a daily basis. So it's something you plug in, and it does like a top-off charge, and then it does some other stuff. I think it does like maybe a discharge or something, but it's just it's there to maintain the battery. And so it's, like I said, it's rather pricey. I think it's more than $150.
I just use the small one, about 45.
I know I got the same thing. I just the small one. It's fine. But they make little tiny trickle chargers, and I think those are fine and a good way to do it. Because the inside of the aircraft, even though you have the master switch off, you still have other things running. Especially, I don't know, you have the new avionics. I think they have a power button. Do they have a constant, or they run off an internal battery? Because they've got memory in them. But I know my clock's always running, so whatever that does. So anyway, yep. Let's see. When you're charging, I said make sure the vents are open. Clean up electrolyte spills with baking soda. All right. So my last point is, I'm just going to put this. So keep away from NiCad batteries. All right. So there was this big thing, like back when I got in aviation. Oh my God, don't ever let a NiCad battery and a lead acid battery even see each other. I mean, if one's going to walk by, you got to kind of, hide it. Don't look, because if the two should ever see each other, if you have a spill out of a lead acid, what do you clean it up with? Sodium bicarb baking soda. If you have a spill in a NiCad, you use acid. So you see, one's a base, one's an acid. And so you mix the two together, and they're supposed to cancel each other out. So there was a big thing. I mean, and not just like people saying that. It was, if you had a repair station, you have to have in your manual that NiCads are over there and lead acid are way over there. Because our repair station, we did NiCad servicing for Citation. And oh yeah, it was a big deal. I had to keep them totally separate. You weren't allowed to, and now some places even buy battery, like our Connex boxes. Tyler will tell you what that is. You actually can buy these things, and they're all battery charging. And is this for real? And I started reading a bunch of stuff, and they said no, it's completely fake. It just doesn't really happen. So the off gassing of one is not killing the one over here, and there's actually no reports of that ever happening, and it was kind of just one of those things. But I would never leave this room and tell anybody in a shop that. You go work for a shop and they want to tell you, don't ever mix the two. You just say, right on, I'm never mixing the two, just whatever. Because it is just so ingrained in the culture that you can't change it. So don't bother. So don't make yourself look,
Ours are 15 feet apart.
which is completely adequate. And honestly, for cleanliness purposes, that's beautiful. That's exactly the way I'd want it, about 10, 15 feet apart. These are the tools for this one, these are the tools for that, because they're different tools, and I think that's just a good way to run a shop. The other thing, I didn't write this down, but oh my God, heaven forbid you should ever take a lead acid battery and sit it on the concrete. You've just ruined it. And so there's always a little truth to something. I don't know, there's truth to the mixing of the batteries, because yeah, they do cancel each other out if you were to spill the two and mix it up. The compounds that lead acid batteries used to be made out of, the outer casing, did leak electrons. And when it's something with a concrete floor, it really would leak through. But I read an article saying they haven't used those compounds in like 50 years. But at the same time, most of your shops are like, don't ever do that, it'll ruin it. So just don't, and just whatever. Okay, yeah, sure, I got it, no problem.
Play along.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So in the past, I've always replaced the battery when cranking speed was reduced, and it's kind of flying regularly. So are you saying that a structured charging plan with a battery charger may bring that battery back?
Okay, well, look at my battery. So I used it, it flew, and I didn't do a whole lot of work to the airplane with it on. I mean, I checked the landing lights, taxi light, nav lights, and I had it on and off a couple times, checking voltages while I was changing the voltage regulator, but it wasn't much use at all. And then I brought it in here and I put it on the constant potential for about an hour or two at 14.2 volts. We pulled it in the lab, and then it did a measured discharge test, and it failed. And so that means a new battery. But the next step is, if it fails, charge it at 5 amps for a C1 rate. So I did that, and today this thing would have went for an hour and a half. It was still because you discharge it down to 10 volts, and it has to. So you do it at discharge at a C1 rate, which for my battery is 23 amps. So you got to do 23 amps, and it has to do 23 amps for a minimum of 80% of that, 48 minutes. So it failed the first time. I charged it, I did it again, and when I went at 50 minutes, it was still at over 12 volts. So it wasn't even close to dying. So I'm like, okay, I didn't expect that. I kept thinking the machine is wrong or something at that point. But so that's part of the instructions for continued airworthiness. And you can see that it kind of reconditioned it a little bit. Especially considering last year, it did the same thing. Failed the first time, passed the second. So
that structured charging is something that the alternator on your plane is not capable of.
it really doesn't. It's just, that was just 14.5, 6 volts. So it seemed to be a good thing. So once a year, I guess. I don't know if that helps, hurts, but I think my battery's been in the plane for quite a while. I've owned it, this is my 3rd annual. So he's still going good. And in a 182, they take a beating because that's a long way for it to run to the starter. It goes all the way to the back of the plane, the front of the plane. All right, so those were the things there. Installation, new batteries may come. We talked about that with electrolyte. Up to you to add the electrolyte. It's pre-charged. Add the electrolyte. Let me see. Inspections on installations. Yeah, check the battery box. We paint the battery box. I usually paint it black. It's an acid-proof paint. So it's a special paint you buy. So I don't know. Every annual, I pull the battery out, look down in there. If clean it out. If it's not clean, there's corrosion. I'll sprinkle some baking soda in there. Kind of work it around with the stainless steel brush. Clean it out. A little water in there. Get it all clean up. Neutralize everything. Sand it a little bit with a scuff pad. Put the acid-proof paint on it. Make sure the drain lines are all cleared out. Then charge the battery. Put it back in. Let me see what we got. Check battery box for cracks, corrosion. Paint with acid-proof paint. Make sure the hold down works. Connecting batteries in series will increase the what? Voltage or amps? Connecting in parallel increases amps. All right. All right. I think that's all I got about lead acid. I think we did a good job covering lead acid. So I guess that's a good point just to take a break then in between lead acid and the next.